I've answered thousands of questions in my lifetime, but there's one question that still makes me laugh every time I think about it. It happened at the 2019 Daily Journal shareholders meeting when someone stood up and asked, "Charlie, you and Warren have been partners for over 60 years. Why is Warren so much richer than you?" The room erupted in laughter. Warren was worth about $84 billion at the time. I was worth maybe $2 billion. That's a 42 times difference. 42, and I know exactly why. But before I tell you the real answer, I want you to understand something. This isn't a story about regret or jealousy or wishing I'd done things differently. This is a story about choices, compound interest, and what it actually means to be wealthy. And if you pay attention to what I'm about to tell you, you'll understand more about building wealth than most people learn in their entire lives. When that person asked me that question, I laughed and said, "Well, he got an earlier start. He's probably a little smarter. He works harder." Then I paused and added, "Why was Albert Einstein poorer than I am?" The room laughed again. But I wasn't entirely joking.
Hi, Charlie. In spite of being partners for so long, why is Warren so much richer than you?
Well, he got an earlier start. He was probably a little smarter. He works harder. There are not a lot of reasons. Why was Albert Einstein poorer than I was? The truth is, wealth accumulation and intelligence are only loosely correlated. Einstein was one of the smartest humans who ever lived. He died with a net worth of maybe $1 million in today's dollars. Meanwhile, I'm sitting here worth over $2 billion, and Warren's worth over $80 billion. Does that mean Warren and I are smarter than Einstein? Of course not. It means we understood something Einstein didn't spend much time thinking about. The power of compound interest applied systematically over very long periods of time. That's the entire secret. Everything else is just details. But those details matter enormously because they're the difference between $2 billion and $80 billion. So let me tell you the real story of why Warren is so much richer than me. It comes down to 4 fundamental differences in how we approached wealth building over 7 decades. And by the time I'm done explaining these differences, you'll understand not just why our net worths diverge so dramatically, but more importantly, how you can apply these same principles to your own financial life regardless of where you're starting from. The first reason Warren is richer than me is simple. He started earlier and he never stopped. I met Warren in 1959. I was 35 years old. He was 29. At that point, I'd already made my first $1 million through real estate development and some side investments. I thought I was doing pretty well. I had a law practice that was generating good income. I had some successful real estate deals under my belt, and I was living comfortably. Warren, on the other hand, was running a small investment partnership out of Omaha. He'd been investing seriously since he was about 11 years old. By the time I met him at 29, he'd already been compounding money for 18 years.
It's been serenaded in song,
18 years.
And on canvas.
That head start alone accounts for an enormous portion of our wealth gap. But it's not just that he started earlier, it's that he never stopped. From age 11 until right now at 93, Warren has been investing continuously. That's 82 years of uninterrupted compounding. I didn't start investing seriously until my mid-30s, and I've taken breaks along the way to focus on other things. That's 40 years of compounding versus 82 years. The mathematics of that difference are staggering. Let me give you a specific example of how this works. Suppose you invest $10,000 at age 20, and it compounds at 20% per year. By age 60, that $10,000 becomes about $9 million. Now, suppose you wait until age 35 to invest that same $10,000 at the same 20% return. By age 60, it's worth about $200,000. Same amount invested, same rate of return, but a 15-year head start turns $200,000 into $9 million. That's a 45 times difference from just starting earlier. Now, extend that over Warren's 82 years versus my roughly 60 years of serious investing, and you start to see why the wealth gap exists.
almost
But there's
halfway
another element to
between
this that
Boston
most people
and
miss.
Washington, D.C. New York
Warren
City
didn't just
is
start
comprised
earlier.
of 5
He
boroughs,
scaled up
covering about
faster.
300 square miles
By his early
with more than
30s,
7 million residents.
Warren was managing
In area,
significant
the
sums of
biggest
money
borough
through
is
his
Queens,
investment
home to John F.
partnerships.
Kennedy and LaGuardia
He was
airports,
reinvesting
as well
every
as the
dollar of
high-flying
profit
New
back
York
into
Mets
finding
at
new
Shea Stadium.
opportunities.
The
He
northernmost
was living
borough
on a
is the
tiny
Bronx,
fraction
famous
of what
for
he
its zoo
earned
as
and letting
home to a
everything
Chinese
else
community of
compound.
more than 100,000.
I was more
Car
balanced
sport
in my
by thousands
approach.
more visitors,
I enjoyed
attracted by the
making
shops
money,
and
but I
restaurants
also
offering
enjoyed
exotic
spending
herbs,
it on things I
vegetables,
cared about.
condiments and ducks,
I
or
gave
jade
money
and
to
ivory,
causes
and
I
other
believed
treasures
in.
imported from
I
the
lived
Orient.
well. I didn't optimize purely for wealth accumulation. Neither approach is right or wrong, but they lead to vastly different outcomes over time. Every dollar Warren reinvested in his 30s and 40s is now compounded for 50 or 60 years. Every dollar I spent or gave away stopped compounding immediately. The mathematics of compound interest are unforgiving. They reward patience and punish consumption. Warren understood this at a visceral level from a very young age. I understood it intellectually, but I didn't organize my entire
While the
life
rest of the
around
city is closed
maximizing
up
it the
on
way
Sunday,
Warren
the
did.
Lower East Side
The
comes
second
alive.
reason Warren
It's
is
a big
richer than
shopping
me
day
is
here,
that he
and
made
bargains
better
are to be found if you
decisions
know how
about
to
what to
negotiate.
own and when
The
to sell
stalls
it.
on Orchard and Grand Streets are
Specifically,
filled
he
with all
almost
sorts
never
of
sold
items that are
anything.
sold uptown in
I,
fancier
on the
stores
other
for
hand,
much more
sold
money.
things too
What do
early.
you get here that you
Let
can't
me
find
give you the
in
most
Bloomingdale?
painful
Bargains.
example.
Bargains
In
galore. Everything is cheaper
1996,
than Bloomingdale's down
I
here.
owned about
We have all
18,000
the new
shares of
products
Berkshire
in the
Hathaway
home
Class
came
A
to
stock.
He called it a
At
mighty
today's
woman with a
prices,
torch, lighting the way
around
to freedom.
$600,000
She was
per
a
share,
generous gift
that
and a
stake would be
noble
worth
vision,
nearly
but
$11
public
billion.
apathy almost prevented
11
her
billion.
arrival. A
If I
pedestal
had
for
simply
the
held
statue
those
was to be
shares
built
and done
from
nothing
private
else
donations
with
in the
my
United
financial
States,
life,
but the money
I would
barely
be
trickled
worth
in.
more than $11
It wasn't
billion
until
today.
newspaper publisher
Instead,
Joseph Pulitzer
I'm worth
launched
about
a
$2.5
national
billion.
campaign that money
What happened to
poured in
the
from
other
all parts of the
$8.5
country,
billion?
and the pedestal
I
was
gave
built.
most of those shares
On
away
October
to
28,
charity over the years.
1886, the Statue
Now,
of Liberty,
before you think I'm
enlightening the world,
complaining,
was
let me be
dedicated
clear.
by President Grover
I
Cleveland.
don't regret those
100 years
donations.
later, to commemorate
They
her
went to
centennial,
universities,
the statue
hospitals,
was
and
restored
causes that
and
mattered to
rededicated
me.
by the grateful people
The money
of
did
the United
genuine good
States.
in the world. But from a pure wealth accumulation standpoint,
Today, most visitors
giving
reach the
away
city via one
appreciating
of its three
assets
major airports.
is the
But New
single
York remains a
biggest
very busy
mistake you
port,
can make.
second in the world
Here's
only to
why.
Rotterdam, the Netherlands.
If I had held
Roughly
those
every
Berkshire
28
shares
minutes,
until
an
they
ocean-going vessel
appreciated fully,
enters or leaves the
then
port
given
with
them
cargo,
away, the
passengers, or
charities
both.
would have received more money and I would have retained more wealth.
Manhattan
It's a
is bordered on
win-win
the
that
west side
I
by
didn't
the
fully
Hudson River,
appreciate at the
and on the
time.
east
Let me
by
show you
the
the
East
math.
River. The
If
great
I gave
avenues
away one
traverse the
share
city
of
from north to
Berkshire
south,
in
and for the most
1996,
part,
when it
are
was
numbered
worth about
consecutively.
$35,000,
Cross streets are usually
that charity
numbered
received
consecutively, too,
$35,000.
with the lower numbers
If
being
I had held
downtown.
that share until
And the city
today,
is
when it's worth
unofficially divided into neighborhoods
$600,000,
and
that
districts.
same charity would have received $600,000.
New York's climate can
That's
best be
17
described as
times
temperate.
more value to
Winter
the
lows
charity
average
from
in
the
the
exact
30s,
same one
summer highs
share,
in the 80s.
just
With
by
a generally
waiting
pleasant
27
climate
years.
and the surprising
Meanwhile,
compactness of Manhattan Island,
if I had
New
kept
York
half
is
my
best seen
shares
on
and
foot.
given away the other half
But when
after
the
they
weather just won't
appreciated,
cooperate,
I would have given
pedestrians
away
can take
more
to a
total dollars
transportation
to
system that
charity
includes
while
almost
retaining
12,000
significantly
taxis,
more personal wealth.
1,000 miles of bus
Warren
routes, and more
understood
than
this principle
200 miles of
completely.
subway lines.
He's committed to giving away nearly his entire fortune to charity, but he's doing it strategically. He's held on to
The
his
traffic in
Berkshire
New York
shares
is
while they
legendary, but what you
compound,
might not
and
realize
he's
is this
donating
congestion has
appreciated
been
stock
around as
in
long
other
as the
companies are
automobile.
committing to give after death. This allows maximum compound growth before the wealth transfers, which means more money ultimately goes to
Well, as with
charitable
that other great
causes,
baseball team,
while
the
he
New York
retains
Yankees.
control and benefits from the growth
is
during
the
his
most heavily
lifetime.
populated borough.
I was
with
thinking
more than 2.25
linearly
million
instead of
people.
exponentially.
If independent,
I
it would be
thought,
the
I
fourth
have money
largest
now,
city in the
causes
United
need
States.
money now.
Staten
I should
Island,
give
the
it
fourth
now.
borough, is more
That's
rural than the other
compassionate
boroughs.
but
It's best known
mathematically
for its ferry ride,
suboptimal.
a 5-mile
The
trip to
exponential
Manhattan
thinker
that still
says,
costs a quarter,
if I
but
wait,
is worth much more.
this money will grow
But the
significantly,
borough that means
and I can
New
give
York
much
to
more
the rest of
later
the world
while
is
retaining
Manhattan.
more for myself.
While the 5 boroughs
It's not
together
greedy,
comprise New
it's
York
just
City.
smarter
It's the
mathematics.
island of Manhattan
This
that
principle
we'll explore.
applies to more than
It's a
just
small
charitable
island,
giving.
little more than
I
13
sold
miles long
investments
and
too
2
early
miles
throughout
wide
my
at its
career
widest
because
point.
I was
But
thinking
it holds
about
a preeminent
absolute
place in the
dollars
world of
instead of
art,
compound growth
finance,
rates.
business,
I'd buy
media,
something for $1
architecture,
million,
fashion,
sell
design,
it for
and
$5
Carry on.
million, feel smart
What we
about
now
the
call
5
New York
times
City
return,
was inhabited
and
by the
move on to
Indians in
something else.
1609, when
Warren
Henry
would buy
Hudson,
something
sailing
for
for the
$1
Dutch East
million and
India
never sell
Company,
it.
first
40
navigated the
years
river
later,
that now bears his
it would be
name.
worth $500 million.
The first Dutch
His
settlers
one-time
arrived in
500 times
1624
return beat
and
my
established
5
a
times
settlement
return
and
by a
trading post
factor of
called
100.
New Amsterdam.
The difference
In
is that I was playing a
1626,
game of
for the
making good
equivalent of
returns on
$24
individual
in goods,
investments.
Peter Minuit
Warren was
bought
playing a
Manhattan
game of
Island from the
maximizing
Indians in the
lifetime
name of the
compound
Dutch
growth.
West India Company.
Those are two completely different
It's a big
games
shopping day
with
here,
completely
and
different
bargains are to be found
outcomes.
if you know how to negotiate.
Most investors play the
stalls
first
on
game
Orchard
because
and
it feels
Grand
more
Streets are
active
filled
and
with
gives you
all
more
sorts of
frequent
items that are sold
feedback and
uptown in
validation.
fancier stores
Warren
for
played
much
the
more
second
money.
game because he understood that's where the real money is made. The third reason Warren is richer than me is temperament. He has better emotional control around money than anyone I've ever met, including myself. And I consider myself pretty rational about financial decisions. Let me give you a specific example from the 1,970 seconds. We were both heavily invested in Berkshire Hathaway, which was going through severe market volatility. There were periods when our holdings would lose 30 or 40% of their value in a matter of months. I remember feeling genuinely anxious during some of those drawdowns. Not panicked, but uncomfortable. I would question whether we'd made the right decisions, whether we should sell some shares and diversify into safer assets, whether we were being too concentrated in one investment. Warren's reaction was completely different. I remember him saying during one particularly brutal market decline, "Charlie, this is wonderful. We're getting to buy more shares at discount prices. If you're not excited when stocks you want to own go on sale, you don't understand investing." He wasn't just saying this to calm me down. He genuinely felt that way. His emotional response to market volatility was the opposite of normal human psychology. When prices dropped, he got happier. When prices rose, he got more cautious. This emotional advantage compounded over decades. During every market crash, Warren was aggressively buying when others were selling in panic. During every market bubble, he was selling overvalued positions or simply holding cash when others were buying at the top. This wasn't because he had better information or superior analytical abilities. It was pure emotional discipline. He had trained himself to feel excitement when others felt fear and caution when others felt greed. I had decent emotional discipline, probably better than 99% of investors. But Warren's discipline was in a different category entirely. And that small difference in emotional control, repeated over thousands of investment decisions across 7 decades, compounds into enormous wealth differences. There's a story that perfectly illustrates this. During the 2008 financial crisis, Berkshire's stock price fell from about $140,000 per share to under $70,000. Warren's net worth dropped by roughly half
New York is
in
definitely
less
the
than a
fashion
year.
capital.
The financial media was
has
questioning
an
whether
international
Berkshire
flavor
would
with
survive.
not only tourism,
Some prominent
but people are
investors
able
were
to
saying
travel
Warren
there
had lost his
to
touch,
all the different
that he
fashion
was too
capitals
old,
of the world.
that the world
So
had
the fashion
changed and
influences
his
come from
methods
Europe
didn't
or the
work
Orient
anymore.
or so many
I
different
was getting
places to
calls
New
from
York
worried
first because
friends
of
and shareholders asking if we should change our strategy, if we should sell some positions and raise cash, if we should be doing something different. Warren's response was to write an op-ed in the New York Times titled "Buy American, I Am." Then he deployed billions of dollars into investments in companies like Goldman Sachs and General Electric at terms that were extraordinarily favorable to Berkshire. Those investments made us tens of billions of dollars over the following years. Warren's ability to stay completely rational and even opportunistic during the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression demonstrated a level of emotional control that very few investors possess. I handled the crisis well. I didn't panic. I didn't sell anything foolishly. But I also wasn't as aggressively opportunistic as Warren was. I was focused more on preservation than on maximizing the opportunity. It's a subtle difference, but it's the difference between extraordinary returns and merely very good returns. And over a lifetime of investing, these subtle differences in emotional response accumulate into the kind of wealth gaps we're discussing. The fourth reason Warren is richer than me is that he optimized his entire life for wealth accumulation in ways that I never did. Warren lives in the same modest house in Omaha that he bought in 1958 for $31,000. He drives older cars. He eats relatively simple food. He doesn't own a yacht or multiple homes or expensive art collections. His personal consumption has remained remarkably low, even as his wealth has grown into the tens of billions. This isn't because he's cheap or doesn't appreciate nice things. It's because he made a deliberate choice to maximize the gap between what he earns and what he spends, which maximizes the amount of capital available for compounding. I made different choices. I've lived comfortably. I've owned nice
Shoppers
homes.
can roam from the cellar
I've traveled
with its arcade of
extensively.
exotic foods to
I've
the
spent
upper
money
floors
on
with their
things I
boutiques,
cared
complete
about,
with convenient
including
cafes.
art, books, and
One other store
experiences.
houses its own recording
I've
studio,
given away hundreds of millions of dollars
rare
to
coin
causes
collection,
and institutions I
and
believed
exotic
in.
toyland.
None of these
There are many
choices were
department
mistakes
stores,
from a
but
life
there's only one
satisfaction
Macy's.
perspective. I've had a wonderful life and I've made a positive impact on the world. But every
As the
dollar I
undisputed
spent on
media capital
consumption
of the
or
United
gave to
States,
charity was
New
a
York
dollar
is
that
home
stopped
base for some of the
compounding.
country's most prestigious
Warren kept
publishing
virtually
houses,
every dollar
newspapers, radio,
compounding
and television
for as long
networks.
as possible.
At the
Over
NBC
70
studios
years,
at Rockefeller
that
Center,
difference in
visitors can
consumption
tour
patterns
the darkened
compounds
sets
into
of
billions
popular
of
news
dollars of
programs.
wealth difference.
For
Here's
any
the
television
mathematics.
production, there are basically
Suppose
three major areas:
Warren and
lights,
I both
sound, and
earned
picture. Before we get into
$1
that,
million
They also
in
learn about the
1960.
complexities of
I might
television
have spent
production through
$200,000 on
demonstration
consumption
and
and given away
participation.
$100,000 to charity, leaving $700,000 to invest. Warren spent maybe $50,000 and gave away almost nothing, leaving $950,000 to
New York is
invest.
huge. It's bigger
That's the
than life.
difference of $250,000 in 1 year. Not enormous. But now compound that $250,000 at 20% per year for 60 years. That 1 year's difference in consumption and giving becomes over $60 billion. $60 billion from just 1 year's different choices. Now multiply that across 60 years of earnings, and you start to see how consumption patterns compound into enormous wealth differences. Warren understood something profound. Every dollar has two values. Its current value, what you can buy with it today, and its future value, what it will become if you invest it and let it compound. Most people focus almost entirely on current value. They think about what they can buy, what they can enjoy, what they can do with money right now. Warren focused almost
At the turn of the
entirely on
century,
future
as the need
value.
for space increased
He
far
thought
beyond its
about what every
availability,
dollar
the
would
city began to
become
grow in a
in
new
10,
direction.
20,
Straight
30
up.
years.
The
If he
construction of
invested
the
it
Flatiron
wisely
Building in
and
1902
let it
marked the
compound.
introduction of the
This
city's
meant making
architectural trademark,
sacrifices in the present to
skyscraper.
maximize
Its 20
wealth
stories
in
were
the
quickly
future.
dwarfed by the
It meant
60-story
living
Woolworth
far
building.
below his means for decades.
And then the
It meant
71-story
saying no
Chrysler
to
building.
consumption opportunities
In
that most wealthy
1931,
people
the
automatically say yes
102-story
to.
Empire State Building
Was
took
this
the
the
premier
right
position
choice?
among the city's towering
That
giants.
depends entirely on what you're
Named for New
optimizing
York,
for.
the Empire State.
If you're
The building
optimizing for
took less than
maximum
2
wealth
years to complete.
accumulation,
It's
it's absolutely the right choice. If you're optimizing for life experiences, current impact, or balanced enjoyment, it might not be. I chose a more balanced path. I wanted to enjoy some of my wealth while I was young enough to appreciate it. I wanted to make an impact through philanthropy during my lifetime, so I could see the results. I wanted to live well, not just accumulate numbers in a bank account. These were conscious choices, and I'm satisfied with them. But I also understand that they cost me tens of billions of dollars in final net worth. That's the trade-off. You can't maximize everything simultaneously. You have to choose what you're optimizing for. Warren chose to optimize for wealth accumulation above almost everything else. I chose a more complex optimization that included current enjoyment and impact, along with wealth building. Both approaches are valid, but only one leads to becoming one of the richest people in human history.
Although the Twin Towers
Now,
of the World Trade
let
Center
me tell you
reached
something that
110
might surprise
stories in
you.
1972,
There's actually
the
a
Empire
fifth
State
reason
Building
Warren is richer than me, and it's one that neither of us talks about much publicly. Warren is better at playing the long game psychologically. He's more patient, more focused, and more immune to distraction than almost anyone I've ever known. Let me explain what I mean. Investing successfully over long periods requires ignoring an enormous amount of noise. Every day there are news events, market movements, economic data, company announcements, analyst opinions, and countless other inputs that could potentially influence your investment decisions. Most investors react to this constant stream of information. They read something concerning and sell. They read something exciting and buy. They're constantly adjusting their positions based on new information. Warren has an almost supernatural ability to ignore noise and focus only on what actually matters. He reads constantly, but he filters information through a very specific lens. Does this change the fundamental long-term value of businesses I own? If the answer is no, he ignores it completely. I'm pretty good at filtering noise, but Warren is exceptional. He can sit through years of market volatility, economic uncertainty, and media criticism without changing his core positions or strategies. This ability to maintain focus on long-term fundamentals while everyone around you is reacting to short-term noise is incredibly rare and incredibly valuable. Here's a specific example. In the late 1990 seconds, during the dot-com bubble, Berkshire's stock dramatically underperformed the broader market. Technology stocks were soaring while Berkshire, which owned boring old economy businesses, was lagging badly. The financial media was brutal. Articles were written questioning whether Warren had lost his touch, whether his methods were outdated, whether he needed to adapt to the new economy. I remember reading some of this coverage and feeling defensive. I wanted to respond, to explain why we were right and the market was wrong, to justify our approach.
Met in
Warren's response was to do absolutely nothing.
Of the New York Stock
He didn't
Exchange.
change the strategy. He didn't buy
Today,
technology
more than
stocks to
1,000
keep up
members
with the
trade
market.
shares in a daily
He
frenzy,
didn't even
far
bother
removed from the
responding to the
gentlemanly handshakes
criticism.
or taps
He
on the
just
shoulder
kept
that sealed the
doing
bargain
exactly
200
what
years
he'd
ago.
always done, buying good businesses at reasonable prices and holding them forever. Then the bubble burst, technology stocks collapsed, and Berkshire's approach was vindicated completely.
Farther uptown,
But Warren
the area
didn't
between
gloat or
Broadway
say,
and
"I
9th
told
Avenue,
you so."
south of 40th
He just
Street,
kept doing
is
the
known as
same
the
thing.
Garment District.
This ability
Within
to
these
stay
few blocks,
focused on your
also referred
strategy
to
regardless of
generically as
external
7th
noise
Avenue.
or criticism is
1/5 of the
enormously
clothing
valuable over
manufactured in the
time.
United
It
States is
prevents you
made.
from making emotional
Representative
decisions
from the
during
clothing
bubbles and
manufacturer,
crashes.
Paris Blues,
It keeps you
explains
invested
why
in
New
good
York is
assets
so
when everyone
important
else
to the
is
industry.
selling.
New York is
It
definitely
allows
the fashion
compound
capital.
growth to work uninterrupted
It
over
has
very
an
long
international
periods.
flavor with
I had
not only
decent
tourism,
focus
but
and
people
discipline,
are able to travel there
but Warren's
to
is
all the
truly
different fashion
exceptional.
capitals of
And
the
that
world.
small difference,
so the fashion influences come from
maintained
Europe
over
or the
70
Orient
years,
or so many different
contributes
places to New York
significantly
first
to our
because of
wealth gap. Let me tell you what all of this means for you practically. You're probably not going to become as wealthy as Warren Buffett. Neither am I. And I've been his partner for over 60 years. But you can absolutely apply these principles to build substantial wealth over your lifetime. First, start as early as possible and never stop. Every year you delay starting is a year of compound growth. You're giving up forever. If you're 20, start now.
How do you
If
describe
you're 40,
New York?
start
It's
now.
been serenaded in
If you're
song,
60,
portrayed in
start
print
now.
and on canvas,
It's
captured
never
on
too late
celluloid,
to benefit
and
from
imprinted in the mind
compound
of
growth.
anyone who's ever
But
visited
earlier
or
is
dreamt of
always
visiting
better.
the Big Apple.
Second, be very careful about selling assets that are
New York
compounding
is a
well.
city like no other.
The biggest
A city of
mistake I
fish
made
market is still a
financially
hub
was
of
giving away
activity in the early
Berkshire
hours of the
shares
morning.
that went on to appreciate enormously. You might not have Berkshire shares,
But now the area
but the
attracts
principle
visitors all day
applies
long as they
to any
flock to
good
the shops,
investment.
restaurants, and
If you
attractions on the
own
South Street
something
seaboard.
that's genuinely increasing in value over time, hold it. Don't sell just because you've made a profit. Don't sell to diversify into something you understand less well. Don't sell to buy something more exciting. Just hold it and let it compound. Third, develop
The
emotional
Seaport is a
discipline around
restoration
money
project
and
that includes a
investing.
museum, an
This is harder
audiovisual
than it
presentation,
sounds,
and an
but
exhibit
it's
of historic
learnable.
vessels.
Start by understanding that your emotional responses to market volatility are usually wrong. When you feel panicked and want to sell, that's often the best time to buy. When you feel euphoric
Also
and
on
want
the
to
East
buy
River,
more,
between 42nd
that's often the
and
best time to be
48th Streets,
cautious.
is the
You
majestic
can train
United
yourself to
Nations
recognize
complex.
these emotional responses and do the opposite of what they're telling you to do. Fourth, be intentional about what you're optimizing for in your financial life.
A guided
If you want to
tour is the
maximize
best way
wealth
to see all of the
accumulation,
public
you
rules,
need to
and
minimize
visitors are
consumption and
welcome to attend
maximize
most
the amount of
official
money you're
meetings.
investing. If you want to balance wealth building with current enjoyment and giving, that's fine, but understand you're making
Translators
a
on the scene
trade-off.
provide
The key
simultaneous
is being
translations
conscious
of all
about your
speeches and
choice,
discussion
rather
in the
than
UN's
drifting into
6 official
consumption
languages.
patterns without thinking about the long-term cost. Fifth, ignore noise
For more than
and
40
focus on
years, world
fundamentals.
leaders have stood at the
Stop
podium of
checking
the
your
UN's
investment
General
accounts
Assembly,
every day.
broadcasting their
Stop
viewpoints
reading
to the
financial
world.
news constantly. Stop reacting to market movements and economic predictions. Focus instead on owning good assets, holding them for long periods, and letting compound growth do the work.
New York's ethnic
Most of
neighborhoods,
investment
though in
success
close
is about
proximity
not
to each
doing
other,
stupid
still
things
manage to
rather than
retain
doing
their own
brilliant
customs,
things.
personality, and
These
charms.
principles sound simple,
This is
and
a
they
wonderful
are.
city.
But simple doesn't
How do
mean
you like
easy.
Mulberry Street?
Implementing them consistently over decades requires discipline that most people simply don't have. That's why most people don't build substantial wealth, even when they have
Here
the
in Little
income and
Italy,
opportunity to do
restaurants,
so.
coffee shops, clam
As
bars,
I
and
think
pizza
about the
parlors
question
fill
of
the
why
air with
Warren is so
fragrant
much
and
richer
spicy
than me,
aromas.
I realize the answer reveals something important about success in general. Warren became extraordinarily wealthy, not because he's extraordinarily different from other successful investors, but because he's consistently better at a few key things, and he maintained those advantages for an extraordinarily long time. He started earlier and stayed invested longer. He almost never sold winning positions. He had better emotional discipline during market volatility. He optimized his consumption patterns for maximum capital accumulation. And he ignored noise better than almost anyone. None of these advantages is dramatic by itself, but compounded over 7 decades, they create the kind of wealth differences we see today. This is actually encouraging if you think about it. You don't need to be a genius to build substantial wealth. You don't need to take enormous risks or find the next big thing. You just need to be slightly better than average at a few key things and maintain those advantages consistently over time. Time and consistency will do most of the work for you. The biggest risk to your financial success isn't making a few bad investments. It's giving up too early, getting distracted by short-term results, or constantly changing your strategy. Warren's greatest advantage might simply be that he stuck with the same basic approach for 70 years, while everyone else was chasing new strategies every few years. There's one final thing I want to say about this. The question of why Warren is richer than me assumes that being richer is automatically better. I don't think that's true. Wealth is a tool for achieving goals, not a goal in itself. The question you should ask isn't how can I accumulate the most money possible, but rather how much money do I need to live the life I want and make the impact I want to make. Warren chose to maximize wealth accumulation, and he's been spectacularly successful at that goal. But that choice required sacrifices. He lived modestly, worked constantly, and deferred most consumption and philanthropy. I chose a more balanced approach, enjoying my wealth along the way and giving to causes while I could see the impact. I'm completely satisfied with my choices. Both approaches are valid, but they require different strategies and lead to different outcomes. The key is being intentional about your choice rather than drifting into patterns without thinking about what you're optimizing for. If you want to maximize net worth, study Warren's approach carefully and be prepared for the sacrifices it requires. If you want balance, create your own approach based on these principles but adjusted for your values and goals. Whatever you choose, understand that building wealth is about making consistently good decisions over very long periods. It's about avoiding big mistakes that can destroy years of progress. It's about recognizing that small advantages compound into big advantages if you give them enough time. You don't need to become Warren Buffett to achieve financial security and independence. You just need to apply these principles consistently over time at whatever scale is appropriate for your situation. Start early or start now if you didn't start early. Hold good investments and let them compound. Develop emotional discipline to think long term. Be intentional about consumption versus investment, and ignore noise while focusing on fundamentals. Do these things consistently for 20, 30, 40 years, and you'll be wealthier than you probably imagine possible right now. Not as wealthy as Warren, but wealthy enough to achieve your goals and live the life you want. And ultimately, that's what matters. Not the absolute size of your wealth, but whether it's sufficient for your purposes. So when someone asks you in 30 years why some other investor is richer than you, I hope you can give them an answer that shows you made intentional choices about what you were optimizing for in your financial life. Because that's what separates successful people from everyone else. Not the size of their bank accounts, but the intentionality of their decisions and the consistency of their execution over time. Now let me tell you about something else that contributed to our wealth gap that most people never consider. Warren has what I call investment endurance. It's different from patience. Patience is waiting for the right opportunity. Endurance is continuing to make good decisions even after you've already won the game. Most people, once they've made enough money to be comfortable, they ease up. They start spending more. They take bigger vacations. They buy nicer things. They give themselves permission to relax because they've earned it. There's nothing wrong with this, by the way. It's completely rational human behavior. But it's not what Warren did. Even after Berkshire made him a billionaire, then a multi-billionaire, he kept living in the same house, eating the same food, and reinvesting every dollar with the same discipline he had when he was starting out. I watched this happen over decades. We'd have years where Berkshire would generate billions in profits. Warren's personal share of those profits would be enormous, and he'd spend maybe $50,000 of it on personal consumption. The rest went right back into finding new investments. I was more normal in this regard. Once I had
Since
enough money to be
1822,
comfortable,
the Fulton Fish
I
Market
started
is operated
enjoying
from a
it
site
more.
just south of the Brooklyn
Not
Bridge.
excessively, but I wasn't optimizing every dollar for maximum compound growth anymore. I'd take nice trips. I'd donate to causes
The
that
city's
mattered to
premier
me.
fish market is still a
I'd
hub
buy
of
things I
activity in the
wanted.
early hours of the morning.
Warren just kept compounding, year after year, decade after
But now
decade,
the area attracts visitors
never
all
easing
day
up,
long as they flock
never
to the
declaring
shops,
victory and
restaurants,
relaxing his
attractions of
discipline.
the South Street
This
seaport.
endurance, this ability to keep optimizing for wealth accumulation even after you've already won, is extraordinarily rare, and it compounds into enormous wealth differences over time. Think about it mathematically. By the 1,980 seconds, both Warren
The
and I
Seaport
were
is a
already
restoration
wealthy
project
enough
that
that we
includes a
could have
museum,
stopped working,
an audiovisual
lived
presentation,
comfortably for
and
the
an
rest of our
exhibit of
lives,
historic vessels.
and still had money to leave to charity and family. But we had another 40 years ahead of us. Warren spent those 40 years reinvesting every dollar and continuing to compound at high rates.
Also on the East River,
I spent those
between
40 years
42nd and
living
48th
well,
Streets,
giving
is the majestic
generously,
United Nations
and
complex.
yes, still compounding, but not with the same single-minded focus. The difference over 40 years of continued compounding is the difference between 2 billion and 80
is the
billion.
best way to see all
Most
of the
people
public
think the hard
rooms,
part is
and
getting rich
visitors
in the
are
first
welcome to
place.
attend most
Warren taught
official
me that's
meetings.
not true. The hard part is staying disciplined after you're already rich, because that's when the temptations are greatest
Translators on
and the
the scene
perceived
provide
need for
simultaneous
continued
translations
discipline is
of all
lowest.
speeches and
Here's
discussion
another
in the
aspect of
UN's
our
6
wealth
official
difference
languages.
that people don't appreciate. Warren made fewer mistakes than I did. Not dramatically
For more than 40
fewer,
years, world
maybe
leaders
just
have
one or
stood at
two
the podium of
fewer
the UN's
major
General
mistakes
Assembly,
per decade.
broadcasting their
But over
viewpoints to the
70
world.
years, those avoided mistakes compound into billions of dollars of wealth difference. Let me give you a specific example. In the early 1,970 seconds,
New
I
York's
invested
ethnic
in a
neighborhoods,
business that
though
I
in
thought
close
was
proximity to each
undervalued.
other, still
The
managed to retain
analysis
their own
was
customs,
sound.
personality,
The
and
price
charm.
was reasonable, but I didn't understand the industry as well as I thought I did. The investment lost about 60% of its value before I finally admitted the mistake and sold. That one mistake cost me maybe $3 million at
Here
the
in Little
time.
Italy,
Not
restaurants,
catastrophic,
coffee shops,
but
clam bars,
significant.
and pizza parlors
If
fill
I had
the air
avoided
with
that
fragrant and
mistake
spicy
and
aromas.
instead invested those $3 million in Berkshire at 1,970 seconds prices, it would be worth over $500 million today. One mistake. One moment of overconfidence about how well I understood an industry. And it cost me $500 million in opportunity cost. Warren made mistakes too. Every investor does. But he made slightly fewer than I did. Maybe he was more honest with himself about the limits of his knowledge. Maybe he was more disciplined about staying within his circle of competence. Maybe he was just luckier in avoiding the situations that would have exposed his blind spots. Whatever the reason, that small difference in mistake frequency, compounded over 70 years, accounts for billions of dollars in wealth difference. This is why Warren always says
Just
that
south of
investment
Little
success
Italy,
is
the
not
colorful
about
streets
making
of China
brilliant
Still holds a
decisions.
powerful position
It's about
as a
avoiding
symbol of New
stupid
York's
ones.
greatness.
If you can avoid major mistakes
The great hotels
and just
of New
make
York are
reasonably
also
good
landmarks,
decisions
whose
consistently,
elegant walls hold
compound
revealing
growth will
stories
make
of their
you wealthy
celebrated
over
guests.
time.
The
The
New York
investors who
Temple, once
fail
the
are
fabled
usually the
Hotel
ones who
Pennsylvania,
make one or
has
two
hosted every
catastrophic
president of the
mistakes
United
that
States
destroy
since
years or
1919.
decades of progress.
The hotel's public relations
Warren's real
director
genius
recalls one
isn't in
illustrious
finding
visitor.
amazing
Well,
investments,
I remember a visit
though he's
from
done that.
President Johnson
It's in consistently
years ago.
avoiding the mistakes that
He's
would
very
have
fond
destroyed
of,
his compound
cookies.
growth.
And, he
There's
would always
also a
ask for
psychological
particular
dimension
kind
to
of
our wealth
chocolate
gap
dipped
that's
cookie
worth
that he
discussing.
enjoyed to be sent up to the
Warren
apartment.
genuinely doesn't
And
care what
on
other
this one
people
occasion,
think
he
about
was
his
going out
investment
to,
decisions.
lunch to speak
I
in the
care a
hall
little bit.
downstairs.
Not
And
a
as he was
lot,
leaving, he
but
took a
enough that
fistful
it
of cookies
influenced
and
my
put them into his
decisions
pocket.
occasionally.
And from behind
Let
him,
me
you could
explain what
hear
I
a
mean.
voice saying,
There were
"Lyndon,
times
you put
over
those
the
back."
years when
And it
Berkshire's
was
stock
Lady
was
Bird Johnson
underperforming
reminding
the
him that
market
he
and
was on a
people were
diet.
questioning
What's it
our
like for a
approach.
hotel when
During
a
those
president
periods,
visits?
I
It's,
felt some
like any
pressure
other
to do
guest,
something
really. You wanna
different,
make them as
to chase
comfortable as
performance,
possible
to
and
prove the
provide for their
critics
comforts and
wrong.
needs. The
Warren
presidential
felt no
suite
such
at the New
pressure.
York Penta Hotel
He was
consists
completely
of
immune
5
to
rooms,
external
including
opinion
3
about his
bedrooms, a
investments.
very large living
If he
room,
believed
and
something was the
patio.
right decision based on
Just
his
like any other
analysis,
guest.
he did it regardless of what anyone else thought.
Being an island,
This
Manhattan
psychological
is linked to its
independence
neighboring
is
communities
incredibly
through a number of
valuable
tunnels and bridges,
because it
the latter
prevents you
being
from
no less
making
an
reactive
architectural wonder than the
decisions
city's
based on
most
social
interesting
pressure or
buildings.
criticism. I remember during the
The
late
first bridge linking Manhattan to Brooklyn was the
990
Brooklyn
seconds
Bridge,
tech bubble.
completed in
We were
18...
getting questions constantly about why we weren't buying technology stocks. Other value investors were starting to buy them. The media was suggesting we were outdated. Even some of our own shareholders were getting impatient. I felt that pressure. Not enough to change our strategy, but enough that it bothered me. I wanted to explain ourselves, to defend our approach, to make people understand why we were right. Warren didn't feel any of that. He didn't care if people thought we were wrong. He didn't care if Berkshire underperformed for a few years. He just stuck to his principles and waited for the market to come around to his view. And of course it did. The bubble burst. Technology stocks collapsed, and our approach was vindicated. But Warren would have stuck with it even if he'd been wrong, even if technology stocks had kept going up forever, because he was making decisions based on his own analysis, not on what other people thought he should do. That independence of mind, maintained consistently over 70 years, prevents a lot of mistakes. It keeps you from chasing performance into overvalued markets. It keeps you from abandoning good strategies during temporary periods of underperformance. And it allows compound growth to work without interruption from emotionally driven strategy changes. I had more independence of mind than most investors, but Warren's independence was absolute. And that difference, small but consistent over decades, contributed to our wealth gap. Let me tell you about one more factor that people never talk about. Warren has been luckier than me in some specific ways that mattered enormously for wealth accumulation. I know that sounds strange because both of us have had extraordinarily lucky lives and careers. But there are specific instances where luck played a role in our divergent outcomes. For example, Warren happened to meet the right people at exactly the right times in his career. He met Ben Graham, his mentor at Columbia Business School. He met me at just the right moment when we were both ready for a partnership. He happened to be positioned in the right industries at the right times to benefit from major economic shifts. I had good luck too, but not quite as much good luck in quite as many critical moments. It's a small difference, but over 70 years, small differences in luck compound, just like small
So how
differences
do you
in
describe
skill
New
or
York?
discipline. This
It's
doesn't
light and
diminish
color,
Warren's achievements at all.
sun and shadow.
He created the conditions
Streets
for
yellow
luck to
with
find
cabs,
him by being
or thick
prepared,
with events.
by continually learning,
Seasons
by
of
building
spectacle
relationships,
and tributes
by
to
staying
reason.
in the game long enough for
It's
fortunate
surprisingly
circumstances
familiar.
to arise. But it's important to acknowledge that luck played a role. Some of the difference between 2 billion and 80 billion is luck. Not most of it, but some of it. And that's okay. That's how life works. The key is to position yourself so that when luck comes, you're ready to take advantage of it. Warren did that better than almost anyone. He had cash ready when opportunities appeared. He had the knowledge to recognize them quickly. He had the courage to act decisively. So when luck presented opportunities, he captured their full value. I was pretty good at this too, but Warren was exceptional. And over 70 years, exceptional beats pretty good by enormous margins. All of this brings me to what might be the most important lesson from this entire story. The question of why Warren is so much richer than me isn't really about Warren and me at all. It's about principles that apply to anyone trying to build wealth over a lifetime. The specific numbers are different for everyone, but the underlying dynamics are the same. Small advantages in starting time, in holding period, in emotional discipline, in consumption patterns, in mistake avoidance. These small advantages compound over time into large wealth differences. You can see this in every field. The best athletes aren't 10 times more talented than other professional athletes. They're maybe 5 or 10% more talented, but they maintain that small advantage over entire careers and it compounds into championships and fame. The most successful businesses aren't 10 times better than their competitors. They're a few percent better at key metrics like customer service or efficiency or innovation, but they maintain those small advantages for decades, and it compounds into market dominance.
They have a
And
reputation for
the
speaking
wealthiest
loudly and
investors
being
aren't
very
10 times
self-assured.
smarter than
As the song
other
says,
successful
if I can make it
investors.
here, I'll make
They're a
it
little more
anywhere.
disciplined,
A New
a
Yorker's
little more
behavior should not
patient, a
necessarily
little
be
better at
taken for
avoiding
weakness.
mistakes,
It's merely the result of
and
living in
they
a city
maintain
where
those small
conditions are crowded,
advantages for entire
fast-paced, and
lifetimes, and
tumultuous,
it
where you have
compounds
to
into
speak
the kinds of
loudly to be
wealth
heard
differences
and walk
we're
briskly to get
discussing.
through the crowded streets.
This is actually great news for most people. It means you don't need to be Warren Buffett to build substantial wealth. You don't need to be a genius or take enormous risks or get incredibly lucky. You just need to be a little bit better than average at a few key
First
things
opened
and
in
maintain those
1858
advantages
in a mere 20-foot
consistently
wide store.
over
Macy's
long
today
periods.
covers more than 30 acres.
Start a little earlier, hold a
Its
little
large
longer,
roof now encompasses
react
a
a
post
little
office,
less emotionally
a
to
flower market,
volatility,
a pet shop, a
spend a
butcher,
little less
baker,
of what you
pharmacy,
earn,
3
make
beauty
slightly
salons,
fewer
5
mistakes.
restaurants, and
None of
its
these
own
requires
police force.
genius. They just require
Shoppers can roam
discipline
from the
and
cellar with
patience.
its arcade of
But
exotic
if you can do
foods
them
to the upper
consistently
floors
for
with their
30 or
boutiques
40
complete with
years,
convenient
the
cafes.
compound growth will make you wealthier
One
than
other
you
store
probably
houses its own
imagine
recording
possible
studio.
right now. So,
Rare
yes,
coin collection,
Warren is much
and
richer than
exotic
me.
toyland.
And now
There are many
you know
department
exactly
stores,
why.
but there's only one
Not because of
Macy's.
one or two brilliant decisions, but because of thousands of small advantages maintained consistently over
undisputed
7
media capital
decades.
of the United
That's
States,
the real
New York
secret
is home
to
base
building
for some of the
extraordinary
country's most
wealth.
prestigious
Not
publishing
brilliance,
houses,
consistency.
newspapers, radio.